L'État c'est moi. In English, I am the state. More than 300 years ago, this was the motto of Louis XIV, King of France at the time. This concept of the state was literally true. There was no separation between the state budget and the private finances of the king. And when the king went bankrupt, this affected the state likewise, and vice versa. This turned out to be fatal for one of his successors. In 1788, Louis XVI used 2/3 of state receipts to pay the debts of France, went bankrupt, lost his throne, and in the end also his head. The consequences were not always this dramatic, but sovereign defaults have not been rare in past centuries. Sometimes states couldn't repay their debts in time or not at all. At times, states disappeared from the political map, or after a revolution, the new regime did not feel responsible for the debts of the overthrown predecessors. For example, after World War I, the Soviet Union refused to pay for the debts incurred by Tsarist Russia. And after a war was lost, the holders of war bonds usually ended up empty-handed. In general, there are no insolvency rules for states, but bankrupt states do not just disappear. Life continues, and usually it is not possible for creditors to place a lien on insolvent states or auction them off to the highest bidder. This is the major difference to a company which in the event of bankruptcy is taken over by an administrator who settles the bankrupt company's estate. No one knows how many sovereign defaults there have been in history, but the two US economists Carmen Reinhart and Kenneth Rogoff conducted a broad-based historical study for the period 1800 to 2010 and counted more than 300 sovereign defaults. In the Middle Ages and early modern times, it was usually over-indebted kings that borrowed money for wars or the construction of large palaces and later on could not or did not want to repay the debts. As of the 18th century and with the introduction of paper money, a new type of sovereign financial crisis emerged. The major powers at war, such as France and Austria, paid most of their military expenses with paper money that later rapidly lost value. In such cases, the uncontrolled expansion of the money supply later eliminated sovereign debt via inflation. Hyperinflation in the 1920s had a very similar effect in Germany and Austria. In the past decades, the international community made attempts to avoid uncontrolled sovereign defaults. Since the year 1945, the International Monetary Fund has been granting its member states loans in case of emergency. In the 1980s and 1990s, there were tremendous international efforts to restructure the debts of insolvent states in Africa and Latin America, or to forgive their debt completely. Additionally, in the year 2010, the Eurozone set up bailout schemes for the highly indebted EU countries, which could no longer borrow money on the capital markets. Up to now, Greece, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, and Cyprus have benefited from these schemes. Only in the case of Greece have private bondholders of government bonds been made to pay as well.